Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Board of County Commissioners zoning meeting. It's Thursday, September 22nd, and I'd like to call the roll.
Commissioner Bernard,
Here.
Commissioner Kerner,
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner McKinley, Commissioner Sachs, Mayor Weinroth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Commissioner McKinley is en route, and we are going to have the opening prayer and Pledge of Allegiance handled by our Vice Mayor. Please, everybody rise.
May we approach today's business as a task of faith, to do our best within our power to provide positive leadership on behalf of our community and those who live and work here, and that our decisions meet the standards of divine compassion for all. Amen.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Just for our audience, in case we do get past 11:30, a number of us have appointments, so we will break at 11:30, come back at 1:30, but to be honest, I think we'll be done before then, so we will proceed. Do I have notice of publication?
Yes.
May I have a motion to receive and file? All in favor, all opposed, show that's approved 6-0. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, did you get a second on?
Second. That poor clerk. All right, give me a second, somebody. Okay, Commissioner Sachs, you get the second. All in favor, all opposed. Show that 6-0. Thank you for keeping me honest, clerk. Okay, can we have swearing in by our county attorney?
All those wishing to testify or speak on today's items, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, we do. On the sheet in front of you, we have item number 4, Florence Fuller, 2022-478, to move from the regular agenda to consent agenda. Item number 9, we are postponing the electric vehicle charging station, permission to advertise to October 27th. We'll be coming back with a presentation at that time. On the consent agenda, item number 2, DOA CA 2021-1947, Calvary Chapel Church of the Palm Beaches. We have some amended and deleted conditions of approval for the development order amendment as well as the Class A conditional use. Item number 4, Florence Fuller, we have some deleted condition relative to PREM conditions, one on the agenda. And then on the regular agenda, item number 3, ZVPDD 2022-120 Winchester Assemblage PUD. We have several revised conditions for the official zoning map amendment relative to planning conditions.
Lots of red ink. All right. I'm going to look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. I have a motion by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Marino. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, show as approved 6-0. Okay, we're going to move on now to our consent agenda. We do have one comment card on our consent agenda, so we will ask Ms. Ellen Okren to come on up. We'll let her do her 3 minutes of thank you, and then we'll do our disclosures. And I would like to thank staff for all of their work on making this a happy day for our friends over at Florence Fuller. Ms. Okren, you are recognized.
I just want to thank you all for the effort and the support that you give all the children and families and the people who count on you in this community. I'm not going to take 3 minutes. I just really came up here to let you know that it is with heartfelt gratitude that we can come to you when we need you and that you have our support. And I want you to know that the Fuller Center also provides the support and the services to meet the needs of our children and families here who live here, play here, and work here. Thank you.
And thank you very much for everything you've done for the workers of our community to make sure their children are safe.
Thank you.
All right, I skipped over postponements. Let's go back and hit the postponements. We have one postponement, that's A1. I don't need a motion on this, so I guess we can just make a notice that it's been postponed, and that's been postponed to what date?
January 11th.
January
2023.
11th, that's 2023. Amazing, we're already thinking about that next year. All right, let's go back to consent agenda, and we will do our disclosures on the consent agenda, and I call your attention to the fact that item 4, which was listed on regular, is now on consent. So I will move to Commissioner Sacks for her disclosures on consent.
Thank you so much, Mayor. On consent agenda, I have verbal communications with Ellen Okrent and Simone Spiegel. Receive and file informational packet and emails, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 4, I've had verbal communication with Simone Spiegel and Ellen Okren.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. On agenda item 4, Ellen Okren, Simone Spiegel, I've had verbal communication with and correspondence received. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. I have written communication that I received project information from the applicant and verbal communications with Ellen Okren and Simone Spiegel.
Very good. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I had verbal communications with Ellen Okrent.
Okay. I also, on no disclosures on item 2 on Calvary Chapel, but I did have the disclosure of Ms. Okrent, Mr. Simone Spiegel, and various correspondence on the Florence Fuller item 4. Seeing our disclosures handled, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by Commissioner Sacks. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, show the consent agenda has been approved, 6-0. All right, moving right along. We're going to go on to item 3. Staff?
Yes, item number 3 is ZBPDD 2022-120 for the Winchester Assemblage Plan Unit Development. The request before you is an official zoning map amendment to rezone the property from AR to Plan Unit Development, and I can turn it over to the applicant for a presentation.
Do we need a presentation? No. I don't think we need a presentation. I think we're in pretty good shape here, so. Do you want to say anything?
Good morning, Brian Terry with Insight Studio on behalf of the applicant. The only thing I'd like to say is we have been working with our neighbors. We have a private agreement to do some improvements along the boundaries, including a wall and some landscape material that will be included as we move forward in final DRO.
And we commend you for your work with the community on this, and the fact that it seems to be moving as expeditiously as it is a compliment to the activities of you and making sure this will work.
Thank you.
We have no comment cards. This looks like it's going to fly right through. I'm looking for a motion to approve. My counsel is getting nervous over there.
Not nervous, just disclosures, please.
All right,
You know.
fine. We'll make you happy. Madam, Ms. Sacks, Commissioner Sacks, go for it.
Thank you very much. On the regular agenda,
Just item 3.
for Winchester Assemblage PUD, verbal communications, my staff had communications with Brian Terry. Receive and file an email.
Very good. Commissioner Bernard.
No disclosures, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. On the regular agenda item 3, I spoke or met with Brian Terry, Andrew Maxey, Amy Carlson, Charles and Brenda Beck, and received correspondence.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. I received an email from Brian Terry, and that's it.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. On item number 3, I had verbal communications with Brian Terry, Andrew Maxey, Mr. and Mrs. Beck, and I received email correspondence.
Very good. And I also had I'm disclosing my verbal communication with Brian Terry and Andrew Maxey, and I don't have any correspondence to disclose. Amazing. Okay, I'm looking for a motion. I have a motion by the Vice Mayor. I have a second by Commissioner Sacks. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, show that is approved, 6-0. Again, thank you, everybody, on that item. Okay, I think we will make 11:30. Item 4.
Item 4, we did on consent,
Item
so
4 was consent.
item 5 and 6 go together, which is the Americo Center. We have a small-scale amendment, and then the companion zoning application. This is for the Americo on North Lake Boulevard. Would you like a presentation from staff on
Look
these?
to my colleagues. Does anybody need, you want a presentation? No.
I'm good.
We're all good up here. Okay, any cards?
No comments.
No comment cards. All right, let's do disclosures. We'll start from the right. Commissioner
Thank you.
Marino.
This is in my district, actually. Our staff met with the residents and the applicants for a discussion, and we also received an email from resident Sue Anderson and an agent, so we've submitted everything.
Very good. Okay. Commissioner-
Excuse me, through the mayor, this is for the, number 5 is the small-scale amendment, doesn't need disclosure, but it's kind of
gonna
a
do 5
package
and
deal
6
with 5 and 6 together? Okay,
Yeah. so
Thank you.
We'll do disclosures for 6.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm done. Thank you very much.
Okay, Vice Mayor, why don't you go ahead?
I have no disclosures.
Okay. Commissioner Kerner?
No disclosures, Mayor.
Commissioner Bernard?
No disclosures, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Sacks?
No disclosures, Mayor.
Okay. When Commissioner McKinley gets here, it may be a dark room. Okay. We are going to move forward first with item 5. Do I have a motion to approve?
So
I have a
moved.
motion by Commissioner Marino. Do I have a second? I have a second by the Vice Mayor. Seeing no further discussions, all in favor, all opposed, show item 5 approved. Now we're going to move on to item 6.
I'll move item 6, but I also have a comment.
Okay. We will. Why don't you make a comment and then we'll move forward with more.
I really just want to say thank you to our staff and to the design team. This is a small parcel right next to where the Place of Hope built their units, and the design team came around and designed something that would be more suitable and match more with that building. The residents are happier about that and moved it on the property where it should be. So kudos to our staff and to the design team for working together on this and making it a nice, palatable project.
Very good. Yeah, I didn't hear from Mr. Bender, so they must be happy over there, Place of Hope. Okay, show the record show that Commissioner McKinley has joined us. Commissioner McKinley, I'll come back to you in a second. We're going to be disclosure on item 6 in a second. We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, seconded by the Vice Mayor, and that's on item 6. As soon as you're ready, Commissioner McKinley, we'll take your disclosures.
Thank you, and I apologize, I was kicking off the Facing the Crisis Opioid Recovery Summit. I have no disclosures, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Okay, so we've completed disclosures. I have my motion by Commissioner Marino, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Seeing no further discussions, all in favor, all opposed, show item 6 is approved, 7-0. We're going to move on to item 7 now, comprehensive plan text amendments. Staff? I'm sorry, Commissioner Bernard, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 3, I'd like to amend my disclosure to state that I did receive an email from Brian Terry.
The clerk's got that
On item 3,
amended disclosure?
Apologies, sir. Could you repeat the name?
Brian Terry. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we are going back to item 7, comprehensive plan text amendment. Staff?
Okay, this is for initiation for the Trotting Center. We can begin with a presentation by the applicant, followed by Stephanie Gregory with the Planning Division.
Mr. Brophy, always good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Jeff Brophy with WGI. With me here today is also Scott Backman, who's been working with us on this project. I know our client is on their way. This has been an incredibly collaborative process since January of this last year. There are folks from Heritage Farms that I know are going to be coming here. We've been working with them really closely through the process, and so I hope they're just stuck in traffic, and I know parking is an issue out there, but wanted to disclose that we're very hopeful that they get here in order to have their voices heard. So I'll speak as slowly as I can until they get here.
No, slow doesn't work today.
No? Till 11:30. So before you today is the Trotting Center overlay text initiation. The property is approximately 105 acres. It's located on the west side of State Road 7, just south of Hypoluxo Road and Heritage Farms Road on the west side of 441. Just to give you some idea as to where we've come with this property as well as the area, this is the conditions dating back to 1999. You can see kind of the turnpike as, at that point as kind of the development line for the area. The beginnings of what was the Melrose PUD at an LR3 land use had already begun, and you can see the trotting center was already in existence for a number of decades already, and it's outlined there in the red. And as the years went on, obviously the development has marched westward, and it was started the development of what became Bellagio and Isola Bella, as well as Savannah Estates. These are all LR2 land uses just north of that LR3 for Melrose. And today's conditions, again, you can see the development as it's come up against State Road 7, again, just to the east of this property. On State Road 7 are those LR3, LR2 PUDs. And these are the land uses adjacent to us to the east here. What's interesting about this site, again, it's outlined in red there, 105 plus or minus acres, is it is a part of the rural tier. And the rural tier is unique in the sense that a small portion of it is located here along State Road 7. Just to our east is the urban suburban tier. Just to our south and west is the ag reserve tier. And then the rural tier kind of sneaks in here just for a portion of the frontage of State Road 7, the majority of the rural tier being located to the west and to the north, a lot of which is within the boundaries of the village of Wellington. What we have is a kind of a line of undeveloped property along State Road 7, and it equates to about 2,600 linear feet from the south end of the Trotting Center north to Heritage Farms Road. The rest of that frontage within the rural tier is made up of the South Florida National Cemetery. There's several large communication towers which do not have developable property, and there's a couple commercial low located on the corner of Lantana and 441, as well as to the north and south of this property. So it's unique in the sense that yes, the rural tier is located along this stretch. However, there is a portion of 441 outside of the ag reserve that has the infrastructure in place for both traffic as well as for Palm Beach County utilities for some level of development, which is why folks have been looking at this site for a number of years. And when we started this process, we understood that it really needed to begin with community outreach. And we started with staff, and we knew staff had a relationship with the Heritage Farms area, a lot of which because of the commercial landscape businesses that were occurring in the area. So we had outreach with staff. We had an outreach meeting to Heritage Farms in February of 2022, which was very well attended. We had a plan at the time which was presented of a higher density than what I'm going to show you today. We've been working with them over the months to come up with a plan that would be more amenable and more fitting with the community. We also went to growth management, Cobra Growth Management, where the message from Cobra was really continue to work with the folks of Heritage Farms. Again, going back, we've worked with the folks of Heritage Farms, not to say that there aren't still issues that we need to work through. We have a process to go through, probably about another 6 months at the quickest, to continue to work through details of certain issues, which include the master and site plan layout, the density, which will be before you as an LR2 land use in November for transmittal. We have agreed that we will cap our density at 166 units, which comes out to an approximate density of about 1.6 dwelling units per acre. We have worked with the community on lot sizes, including a gradient of different lot sizes from the west to the east, as well as agreements on the size of the buffer, as well as the types of plants that go into that buffer. And I understand that that is more of a zoning issue, but I want you to be aware of how detailed we've been working with them in regards to these concessions, working with them on the land use amendment, the text amendment, and the overlay, including their own. July 6th of this year, we had a joint meeting with Heritage Farms and Palm Beach County staff to discuss the merits of the application and how it would be presented before you today. And we also had a joint meeting with Heritage Farms, Palm Beach County staff, and District Commissioner McKinley at the end of July. On August 25th, this board directed staff to bring forward a Heritage Farms overlay, which would include properties that were not included with the Trotting Center. So what has been submitted, it's a privately proposed text amendment. We are creating the Trotting Center overlay in the rural tier, so we will not be removing ourselves from the rural tier, to allow for a density of up to 2 units to the acre, so an LR2 land use. Again, however, we have capped ourselves at that 166 dwelling units. There's several map amendments that go along with that. We also have a concurrent flu application to go to the LR2 land use. And what this will allow is to allow for the meaningful development of that small frontage there's about 2,600 linear feet along State Road 7. We take up a portion of that to allow for transitional density from what is on the east side of 441 at the LR2 and LR3 land uses down to the approximate 1.6 that we have, and then adjacent to the Heritage Farms community. To give you an idea on some of the lot sizes that we plan on proposing, and I'll show you the master plan in a couple slides, but we'll have a gradient from the west to the east of 3-acre lots along the west side of our property, which would be adjacent to the Heritage Farms lots, so it would be consistent with the types of sizes of lots within Heritage Farms. As we go to half-acre lots, kind of in the center of the proposal, to more traditional single-family homes adjacent to State Road 7. Just to give you some examples of the lots within Heritage Farms, again, adjacent to us, just to our southwest, are approximately quarter-acre lots adjacent to us. And interesting to know that within Heritage Farms, half of the lots are less than 5 acres. So the lots that we're proposing along the west side are consistent with a lot of the lots within the Heritage Farms area. What we're asking for in regards to the initiation of the text amendment is not inconsistent with other projects that have been approved. We are adding the Trotting Center overlay along with the Western Communities residential overlay, which is on Southern Boulevard. So we are consistent. This is not something new that's been placed into the comp plan. We are just adding the Trotting Center overlay to that existing language. And the rural tier does allow for different types of residential development, so we are consistent with that as well, including rural residential clusters, variable lot size developments, and plan unit developments, which will include the Trotting Center overlay. I'm not going to read this all to you, but this is the new objectives that will be included, which is site-specific to the Trotting Center. And so puts our boundaries within kind of that red boundary that you see on the map there. We have, again, worked with the community in regards to what that master plan is going to look like. So we do have criteria and language that would be placed into the comp plan in regards to how this would be designed, which includes a minimum acreage of 100 acres, the maximum density of 2 units per acre, with the understanding, again, that we are capping ourselves at the 166. The site must be located contiguous to the urban-suburban tier, and I think this is the important part, and again, goes to that small frontage of undeveloped property along State Road 7. We must be adjacent to the urban-suburban tier across the road. Frontage and access must be on State Road 7. We are not going to have any access from the Heritage Farms community. And we will be located east of Park Lane, which is that roadway which is on our western boundary. In addition to that, we will have, again, lot sizes of 3 acres going to a gradient of ½ acre and then to approximately 0.2 acres, single-family homes. Expanded buffers, we do have expanded buffer requirements, which again will be more located within, the details of which will be located within a private agreement with Heritage Farms as well as within the zoning resolution. Access again will be from State Road 7, and we shall connect to county water and sewer, which is really the point of this, is the fact that we do have that infrastructure located within State Road 7. This is the proposed master plan. Again, you can see that gradient of lot sizes to the darker yellow, which is the 3-acre lots, to the ½ acre lots, and then to the 70 by approximately 120 and 135 lots as we get closer to State Road 7. Again, this is not new. In regards to us adding this, we are going to just include the fact that the Trotting Center overlay will be allowed to utilize the LR2 future land use, again with the cap of the 166 units. In regards to the remaining application process, again, BCC directed staff to move forward with a Heritage Farms overlay. I know there was a discussion yesterday with, it was a virtual meeting with planning staff and a number of people from the community, and so I know that's underway. Text amendment initiation at Planning Commission, which occurred on September 9th. We were approved unanimously 7-0 to come before you today to ask to move forward. September 22nd, again here today to ask us to move forward with the text amendment initiation. We will be back in November with the transmittal and the details of the future land use amendment. And again, those that will go to Planning Commission on November 4th and be before you on November 16th. And at earliest, I would think February or March in regards to eventual adoption.
What year is that in February?
You didn't see a thing. Thanks for pointing that out. Staff supports the initiation of the proposed text amendment to provide opportunity for the board to consider and direct policy to staff. Again, we will continue to work with staff as well as Heritage Farms on the details of both what has already been agreed to from a land use perspective as well as from a site plan perspective. With that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, very good. I don't see any comments up here yet, so let's have our comment cards.
Want to do a staff presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. On agenda item 7, we have 2 comment cards. Melissa McGowie, I apologize if I got that wrong, and Richard Moyrod, or Moyround.
You have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself again for the clerk.
I will. Melissa McGaughy, 7713 Park Lane Road. This proposed development is actually 118 steps from my front door. So we have been working with the developer for the last 9 months. And so 9 months ago, our neighborhood was informed that a developer wanted to build in our community that is designated 1 home per 10 acres with limited services with agricultural uses in the rural tier. We were advised to meet with the developer. The initial proposal was 488 houses, more than 48 times the current allowable houses. The community was outraged. Although this meeting is regarding the proposed text change amendment, I would like to the following stated for the record. And I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive with Mr. Brophy here, but I think it's just really important that we're all on the same page. We have worked with the last 9 months with Mr. Brophy, Mr. Bachman, and their client, the developer, with over a dozen in-person meetings, Zoom meetings, phone calls, and endless emails. We have also met with county staff and the developer twice. We have met with the community of Heritage Farms 3 times. During that 9-month period, the number of houses have adjusted from 488 to 166. A gradient plan, larger acreage homes would be adjacent to the Heritage Farms community, and smaller lots closer to 441. Also, the surrounding buffer wildlife corridor would increase to 50 feet from 25, and 30 feet on the south, and 25 for the remaining. On the inside, the landscape buffer, the developer will have a 6-foot wall. The landscape buffer would require 100% native vegetation, up to 45 different species. The interior of this proposed development would require 70% native plantings, 100% low light pollution, low pollution lighting, and the ability for homeowners to facilitate solar rooftop options. Also, the larger lot size would be allowing some agricultural uses, such as horses, poultry, beekeeping, etc., as per HOA bylaws. The other concessions by the developer are monetary donation to assist Heritage Farms and attorney fees, replace a culvert that is collapsing and our only ingress and egress, reconstructing the Heritage Farms community entry sign that DOT removed over 12 years ago, median native tree plantings, high-speed internet hardwired into the community, and for a few other things. Again, this developer has made many concessions and made many adjustments to the development, would be more of a hybrid development that would be more compatible with Heritage Farms. However, we were just recently advised that 166 density could be increased if the commission mandated workforce housing, which would change the density to 183. Density has always been the key point in our community. That increase in density is unacceptable, and after 9 months of working with this developer, that increase of density will be a deal breaker. We are in the rural tier, and the understanding is that the workforce housing is not mandated in the rural tier. I respectfully request that either you deny the developer and maintain our R10 designation, or you support our community and the developer in the 9-month-long negotiation and compromise is made to keep the 166 maximum houses.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them.
Mr. Mayor, before you go on, I was wondering, do you want a presentation from staff on this? Yeah.
Does anybody up here need to have a staff presentation? Yes, the district commissioner would like to have one. Why don't we take this comment? We have 2 more comments behind, and then we'll come back. Okay.
Richard Mard, 7667 Park Lane Road, Lake Worth, Florida Heritage Farms. I've been there for 40 years, and I don't want to be here, but I was forced to leave my farm in one of the last rural areas of the county to help protect what's left. So I think we have a problem because words have a meaning, and we've seen problems with that today. The word planning, compatibility, vacant and fallow. Think about it. Master plan is a plan for intelligent future planning. That's gone out the window. I have seen that at my own eyes. Compatibility. Compatibility means that, well, maybe we have people on 5 acres here, maybe 2.5 acres here. 15 units per acre, 40 units per acre, that's not compatible. I was at a meeting recently and I heard staff say about land that was green next to a development that it was vacant or fallow. Vacant because they don't see houses and roads. Fallow, a field that's unplowed or it's been left for the next planting, or unused. Open land is not vacant and it's not fallow. Open land is open land. And here's something you might understand. Our lungs are open space. This is biology. If your lungs are filled, you don't live. If you fill every part of open land in our county, we will suffocate. So, aerial views of the county, developers enjoy poking through, finding a place with no houses and roads. They come to you. Let's rezone it. We're going to do massive development. It'll help take the pressure off this development that you have brought to Palm Beach County and that you then give away with zoning changes. So, right now we are RR10, 1 unit and 10 acres. The original proposal was almost 50 times the density allowed. And this, as I understand it, was being contemplated by this board and staff. Vacant land, to me, is the roof of every mall and shopping center and parking lot. Build there. Increase the density in the east by 50 times. Let's build in the parking lots out here. And we have worked at our own expense and time for 7 months trying to work something out. If the tentative agreements are finalized, they will reduce the harm to our community. But that's not enough. No more. We have absorbed enough of your overflow of development. So anything after this, we go back to RR10, and I expect the board to uphold that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to hold the comments. We're going to go for a staff presentation so the district commissioner can have some information and anybody else here who needs it.
Can I ask a question of staff first?
Absolutely.
Two quick questions. Was, when they talk about the proposal that was 50 times greater than what's allowed on that land right now, was anything to that effect ever actually filed with the county?
No, there was no submittal related to that other, I believe it was mentioned 400 and some odd units, but we didn't have an application for that, no.
Okay, and then the workforce housing issue is actually something that the developer is not asking for and not supporting. And so in your presentation, if you could address where that idea originated, I think it was from one of the Planning Commission members. If you could just address that in your presentation. Thank you.
So good morning, Stephanie Gregory with the Planning Division. The request is to consider the initiation of a private text amendment for the Trotting Center overlay. In May of this year, the applicant submitted a future land use application from RR10, 1 unit per 10 acres, to low residential 2 units per acre for the 105-acre site. The request is also included a tier change from the rural tier to the urban suburban tier. However, after discussions with neighboring residents, the applicant agreed to pursue a text amendment to create an overlay. The overlay would allow the site to remain in the rural tier, and then the tier change would no longer be necessary to achieve the applicant's desired density. The proposed text amendment request is to revise policies in the rural tier to allow for a transitional density option of up to 2 units per acre. The proposed policy language clarifies that the site would not be able to exceed the 2 units per acre through the use of TDRs or workforce housing bonus, nor would the mandatory workforce housing program be required due to the site's location in the rural tier. Development in the overlay would also be subject to additional criteria, including specified location boundaries and acreage requirements that are applicable to the subject site only. The concurrent site plan would be required to demonstrate access onto State Road 7 only, provide a transition in lot size from the smallest located towards State Road 7 to the largest located adjacent to the western property line. And it also would be required to provide expanded buffers of 30 to 50 feet. Staff's assessment is that the proposed overlay is confined to the subject site only and provides a density increase mechanism alternative to a tier change. Staff supports the initiation to provide the opportunity for the board to consider and direct on how this amendment should proceed. However, it does not indicate staff support for the final developed policy language. The Planning Commission recommended to initiate 8-0 at this last hearing, and should the board initiate the proposed amendments today, staff would return with full analysis to both the Planning Commission and the board for transmittal in November. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner, any more comments or questions?
I'll wait till we hear the rest of public comment, and then I'll make comments.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Let's continue with public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next comment, or our next public speaker will be Risa McCare, followed by Roland Yee, and those are the only comment cards that we have.
Very good. Risa?
Good morning. Sorry. Oh, no. It disappeared. Oh, God. Okay.
Restart her.
Okay, good morning, Commission and staff. I want to start by thanking you all for all of the work you do trying to maintain our county. I know you put a lot of thought and effort into the decisions. That being said, I want to address the Trotting Center. In early 2020, we were notified that someone was looking to do residential project near Heritage Farms area. Community, we provided contact information and set up meeting with the developer and the community. At this meeting, the community voiced their strong opposition to the development as they were looking to put 488 homes on 101.63 acres. That's the number I got from Papa. I don't know how they got 105, but doesn't matter. More than 40 times the allowable density. We were advised that development was coming, whether we agreed or not, and that this developer was willing to work with us. So it was advantageous for us to work with them. That being said, we agreed to another meeting, at which point we expressed the fact that we did not agree with the project, but if push came to shove, that density and remaining agricultural was of the utmost importance. We would meet with them several more times over a 9-month period. We emphasized the importance of density and agriculture. We were informed that in the rural tier, there was no requirement for workforce housing, and that would allow them to keep the density lower if they were able to stay within the tier. We worked out a deal that I personally was never 100% on with, but deferred to neighbors who were more directly affected. And that's what you have to do. You have to work with everybody, right? So everybody takes a hit. They were scared. We all felt pressured to make a deal that got them 166 homes rather than the 488, because it's coming whether we want it or not. Fast forward a few days ago to the meeting when we receive an email, our agreement redlined, the hard, fast 166 max units would only be that if the BCC agrees not to require workforce housing, along with other small things that would depend on county agreeing to them. The internet, which is still up in the air. We never asked for much. Our agreement with them came in well under their initial offer to us in exchange for low density. Now it seems that this could go to the wayside. If you decide you need workforce housing in there, our density will go up. The fact that we are in this position sickens me. The only thing I ask of you is that you uphold the ULDC and the comp plan. While I have become an avid viewer of Channel 20 and the BCC, I resent the fact that I feel obligated to take time to come here and time again to stay hypervigilant of what is going on within my own community, that I am losing precious time with my family. I did not sign up for a full-time job with code enforcement, planning, zoning, or as a paid lobbyist,
Risa,
which these
thank you.
companies have.
Appreciate your comments. Okay, one more.
Thank you, Mayor. And our last speaker will be Roland Yee.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I'm going to withdraw my card at this time. That's okay.
Okay, do you want to say if you're opposed or in favor of what's going to be a motion to initiate?
At this point, we're okay with the initiation. I do own the property, for the record, Roland Yee, 7501 State Road 7. I do own the property just to the north, adjacent to the Trotting Center. I understand there's, I guess, some issues and have been some issues going on within Heritage Farms. And at this time, I'd just reserve comment. But I'd just like to thank you, the board, and staff for what you have done so far.
Thank you. Thank you for making the trip up here to visit with us. Okay, Commissioner McKinley, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I want to make some comments. I quietly sat in that first meeting. I snuck in after it started and sat over in a chair in the back of the room and just listened at the outrage at that original proposal. And at 400 plus homes, it was probably not a land use change that I would have supported. But I see a really good faith effort between the community and protecting as much as they can and the applicant. I feel that this is worthy of transmittal. I know that there are still issues that have to be worked out. I know that there are some of those issues that will have to be worked out between the developer and the homeowners that won't be subject to the application. I think the internet issues, that's going to have to be a private agreement between the two of them. I do not support the position of one of the Planning Commission members who is trying to push for workforce housing in the rural tier. I think that if we're going to protect the rural tier and keep that tier rural, that we should do applications that are the lowest density on those project proposals. And so it's not included in the staff presentation. It's not being asked for by the developer. It wasn't a condition for transmittal at the Planning Commission when they had that 8-0 vote. So I think we just take that off the table. But I would make a motion to transmit. Look forward to what you all do after I'm gone when it comes back. And not initiate myself. Thank you for correcting me. We're all having typos today. I would make a motion to initiate this and would encourage the applicant and the homeowners in Heritage Farms to keep working, massaging it a little bit before it comes back to you for that
Very good.
first
Thank you,
hearing.
Commissioner
Thank you.
McKinley. So we have a motion by Commissioner McKinley, seconded by Commissioner Bernard. Okay, I have a Vice Mayor Weiss would like to speak.
Thank you. I was getting ready to second the motion, but as well, but after this hearing, I'd like somebody to explain to me what the issue with the internet is. I'd like to get updated on that, so I don't need to get it here.
They don't have the fiber in Heritage Farms, and I understand the applicant has offered to stub it up to the Heritage Farms community, and then they would then have to build it out within Heritage Farms, but they're offering to put the infrastructure in place to help them get access to high-speed internet in Heritage Farms. It would be a private.
Understand, but there's money available through the state and federal to build out areas, and I was not aware that we didn't have high-speed internet availability in that area. So we'll
anytime-
follow up. We'll follow up. I'll get more information about it.
I can tell you in the last 24 hours, living in Wellington, I've had my internet dropped, my calls dropped, no cell service. There are so many issues on the west side of 441 in this county. So.
That may be a provider issue, but if the infrastructure is not there, that's something we can deal with.
Okay.
Okay, Vice Weiss, I'm sure Mr. Backman will be happy to talk to you about that. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, these rural enclaves are very important to the culture of the county over large, and I'm not clear on why do we have tiers? Why do we have a rural tier with the land use entitlement of 1 unit per 10 acres? Why do we have these if we can just go in and do this overlay thing and blow it up? I'm asking candidly.
Sure, I can answer that for you. So yes, so the county has the managed growth tier system, and per the comprehensive plan, the urban suburban tier is where the majority of development is anticipated. I think the comprehensive plan expects that about 90% of the development within the county will be within the urban suburban tier. The last I checked, I think we're at like 91 or 92%, so it's pretty on target. Then there is the exurban tier, which recognizes an area that is not intended for higher densities, the acreage community, that's in the exurban tier. Then we also have the rural tier, which is limited to future land use designations of RR5, RR10, which is 1 unit per 5 acres, 1 unit per 10 acres. When planning staff first received the application in May of this year, it included a tier change request. Right now on the east side of State Road 7 is the urban suburban tier. This site being on the west side of State Road 7 is in the rural tier. I know with Heritage Farms residents, they had a lot of concern with a tier change and jumping to the west side of State Road 7. So then in them working with the developer and the community, that's where the idea for the overlay came out of.
But if it's inappropriate in the rural tier, then why have an overlay? I mean, you can jump over the entire river, or you can take a bridge and do it slowly, but what's happening here is we're going to have a tier, not a tier change, but we're going to have the overlay, and they're going to build it out, and then the next thing that's going to happen is eventually it's going to turn into the boundary changes, and it's going to be surrounded by development. I mean, when whoever owns this land, I don't know who they are, it doesn't matter to me, but when they purchased it, it had 1 unit per 10 acre. You go in with your eyes open on this stuff, and now we're constantly just adding density everywhere. And it's gonna strike at the heart of the culture of this county at some point.
Kevin, I'll provide a little perspective. Fundamentally, planning is about service provider issues. That's what you're looking for, most efficient and whatever. Provision of services. We tied, this board did back in the late 90s, the concept of character and appearance to that notion of service providers. So what we recognized as a county was there were different lifestyles, different expectations in different areas, and that it was very clear that you had different development conditions and different things were going to be anticipated at different times. In that managed growth tier system, different strategies for different tiers were established. The Ag Reserve had its own, we've talked about that extensively. The ex-urban tier was basically supposed to become or remain what it actually had, but part of the rural tier was it was recognized that there were development pressures that were coming to that area because there were very large tracts of land. We had a process for the central western part of the county. We had a sector plan process, we went through that. Many of those large parcels have transitioned, they have had development, but they have tried to address the specific area or needs of those areas. It was always anticipated in the plan that you would come back and have more specific issues for if they were to develop or how they were to develop or what the specific needs of an area were. Some had different deficiencies in infrastructure that would need to be addressed. The overlay has become the county's method for addressing when you have that. That's what the Indian Trails Grove project was in 2016, the Mento West project and its various iterations. They came through and established their own way forward in that rural condition. So I think this is, to some extent, in that vein of if there's going to be development, what are the specific conditions that are necessary to be addressed? Not just infrastructure, but character and so forth. And that's really what our managed growth tier system is supposed to be. It's an additional layer, not just regulatory from an entitlement perspective, but what are the other planning needs and community needs? And that's what the tier system is about.
Well, I mean, the underlying land use is 1 unit per 10 acres. And it's in the rural tier. And this is, I'm not clear on whether the community is quasi-supporting the initiation because they're under the impression that this is going to be developed no matter what, or there's a genuine interest in working with the developer, or they're excited about having, development next to their rural enclave. I haven't figured that out. There hasn't been a whole lot of public comment, but, this makes me very uncomfortable. Thank you.
Commissioner Sachs.
I wonder if I could ask Mr. Fisher. This was a trotting center that was in use by equestrian groups when harness racing was legal and popular in Florida. Is that the understanding of the prior use of this property?
I don't want to misspeak. I'm not 100%
Not sure.
certain
Does
on that, but
anybody
I'm sure
know
someone here
that?
can speak to that better than I can.
Lisa, could you?
So
help me
horse
out?
farm.
I'm sorry.
It's a horse training ranch. It had a different name prior to the trotting center, but it's been there for many, many years as an equestrian.
Let's have the
Somebody can
representative for
answer me.
the
Right.
developer here.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Backman on behalf of the applicant.
Scott, help me out. Wasn't this a used trotting center for harness racing?
It was, Commissioner. It was associated with the harness racing component, which obviously has been phased out of the state of Florida. The prior owner of the property was based out of New York, and as all that started to transpire, he put the property up for sale. Yes.
I've been there. It was a very nice, and I'm sure that it looked well within the culture of Heritage Farms, which has also been many times the Heritage Farms, and it's also very equestrian, beautiful place. So when we discussed this proposal, we also discussed the idea that it would stay within the, as Commissioner Curtis stated, within the culture of this equestrian area, very rural, very sort of agrarian. Is that our understanding of what you
Yeah,
would like
as
to-
our conversations evolved with the community, it was very evident, as you heard from a couple of the residents, how important it was to ensure that we maintain some consistency. We must have presented a dozen different plans to them. I will tell you, the first several were very suburban. They were very standard, what you see across the street in some of the communities like Bellagio. The master plan that Jeff shared with you shows a transition in density. There was mention of agricultural components in the uses, staying in the rural tier, and not putting those restrictions into our HOA docs are going to allow us to keep what I would say is the western 40% of the site, 40 plus acres of the property, half acre and larger lots, having and allowing for those types of uses. So it was a lot of listening. There were countless meetings, phone calls, emails to try and arrive at a plan that kind of met that balance, Commissioner Kerner, to your question, between staying in the rural tier, developing something that might at least provide that transition between what my client ultimately showed up to do. We're not hiding that we submitted a plan that was 4.6, 4.7 units to the acre the first time that we came in with 488 units, and a true suburban development versus a hybrid development, which is developed based on the communications with the community.
So our discussions where you committed to keeping that architectural look of the equestrian and the agrarian idea at Heritage Farms, consistent with what you want to do, especially in the western borders of your plan, of your community.
That's right. I would just correct it. We haven't had a whole lot of conversation about architecture. It's been more about the natural environment, the open spaces, the buffers, native vegetation, things of that nature, which we've been discussing with them at length. We have another meeting set up next week, which will ultimately evolve into conversations with county staff on the zoning side about a number of the various items that have been discussed and figuring out how best to implement them through this process with the text amendment, as well as through our zoning application that's currently pending, as Jeff said, for the 166 units.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
wanna make sure.
Let me also be clear, you do an outstanding job, and you briefed me very sufficiently on this, and I very much appreciate that, and I also appreciate the efforts, both of you and your client, to work with this community. And I would like to see that go forward, if and when this passes today. But aside from the product delivered or intended to be delivered, what does this community, this county, this government get in exchange for someone who purchased land at 1 unit or 1 unit per 10 acres, and then we vote, and then now the land's worth infinitely more with much more density? I get that now, the workforce housing is not appropriate in the rural tier, but we can certainly extract value by having workforce units off-site somewhere in a more appropriate area. What is it that your client's giving to the community at large in exchange for this massive land use change?
Yeah, I think we've in working with the community, which was our first priority, right? I don't think we really, other than some high-level communications and introductions to the community, stepped foot. I know there was a comment that this board had seen prior iterations of our plan. I don't think anyone here saw anything until we really got to a point where we were ready to present. And we tried very carefully in working with the community to make sure that they were seeing everything before it was submitted to all of you. And so from our perspective, as we started to look at this site and understand its location, a lot of the issues that obviously I'm aware of based on my participation in the development process in this county on a number of different levels, including incredibly dense developments, we tried to set out in a way to address some of those concerns, the housing needs, the issues that I'm hearing as I listen to this board. And so I think from our perspective, the benefit obviously is trying to fill in a little bit of a hole. We understand, we went into this eyes wide open. We knew that we were in the rural tier. We knew we had a long way to go in order to get to this meeting today, and as Jeff said, many, many months further of more substantive analysis. It's going to be done by your staff and otherwise. And so what we tried to accomplish, Commissioner, is kind of, and I think Risa maybe said it best, is everyone gave a little bit here. And so the county, I think the benefit that the county's getting more than anything else is kind of that infill opportunity for additional development at a reasonable density that will kind of work through and address some of the concerns and needs of the overall area, while still providing that transitional opportunity that we've been discussing with Heritage Farms. And so we just tried to balance all the different components associated with what we're trying to bring forward in order to present this to you guys today, and obviously as the plan evolves going forward.
But, and I appreciate that, but give me a public policy reason why this board should provide this overlay and the increased density and values that go with it, when all that I hear from the community and from this board is the need for workforce housing, not the need for large acre lots and half-acre lots. I'm sure those are going to be, very expensive homes. And so give me a public policy reason why I'm sitting up here having a vote on this, and your client is not proactively offering to provide workforce housing elsewhere in the county for this massive entitlement that you guys are asking for, eyes wide open.
Understood, and I think that's a big part of the issue. I know you heard that from some of the residents in Heritage Farms as well. I don't know that we're not willing to necessarily provide it. The issue or the problem that we run into is trying to understand the communications that we've had with the Heritage Farms community in order to bring the density down to a point that we'd be able to move this project forward, right? And the community's been very clear with us as recently as very late yesterday that 166 units is their breaking point. We were at a point earlier in the discussions where the density was slightly higher, not significantly higher. I think you heard that mentioned from some of the residents during their comments, and we were able to bring it down with the understanding that we are in the rural tier, that workforce housing is not necessarily a requirement, and more often than not, in all of the different projects that I work on, it's very clear in our text amendment and otherwise, we're not taking advantage of bonus density, we're not taking advantage of TDRs. Even the essential housing element that was in front of you, and obviously very lengthy discussion a few weeks ago, relates to the provision of additional density for the development of that additional workforce housing. And that's where I understand we're getting additional density here. I'm well aware of that, and that's probably where you were about to go. But it's a different set of circumstances as you're looking to develop a 100-acre piece of property with 1.6 units to the acre in the manner and the fashion that we've worked out with the residents. And I understand that's an agreement that we've been working through with the residents and not necessarily with this board. And we expected to have a variety of different dialogue with this commission as it went forward. We're just trying to, like I said, everyone's kind of taking a hit here and there to try and move forward what would be the most reasonable development proposal possible. So,
and yet it does nothing to attack the workforce housing issues in this county that we try to contend with and resolve every day. And not one offer has been made to build these offsite or to buy out or to do anything to help those that need a place to live. This community, Heritage Farms, has a place to live, and God bless them for that. And now we're offering to give 1.6 units per acre?
1.6.
Over a 100-acre tract?
A little more than that, but yes.
Okay, and not one effort, and it's not your fault. You just work for the people, the client. But I think it's laughable that we're considering this and we're not trying as a board to extract value out of it to help the constituents that can't afford half-acre lots and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, any more comments? Commissioner McKinley?
The county commission is not going to solve the workforce housing problem in this county or in the state of Florida or across the country. And not every proposal that comes before us needs to do density increases and density bonuses for workforce housing. Some, got houses on the island of Palm Beach that I'm sure are asking for variances and special treatments, and we've got 39 cities in this county that haven't opted in to create workforce housing problems. It's not up to us to solve it. It's up to us to have tools, and it doesn't belong in every single project that comes before this board. I'm proud of the work that we've done in the workforce housing that we've approved and the essential housing component that we've done across the county, but I still don't believe that every single project in this county needs to be subject to that program. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll make a final comment and then I'll call the vote. I think Commissioner Kernan makes some valid points. I think that there is a value to what is going on here to the landowner. There's certainly going to be an increase in value, and I think that there's a way for the sharing of that increase in value with the county, and whether it's an in lieu of payment that we can use in other places or off-site. I think we all agree this is not the place to put workforce housing. Certainly, this would be a deal breaker, as we heard from some of the residents adjacent, and so that would not be the proper answer. But I think that there is something that between today's vote for initiation and when you come back, it would be nice to see something that is going to, again, address the issue of workforce housing. We've got a bond issue on the ballot. We're asking our residents to buy on to a $200 million bond, and certainly we need to have someone like your client who is going to get again, I'm not going to call it a windfall, but certainly going to get a benefit. We need to see something back for those who are less fortunate that we're trying to address. We need 100,000 units of workforce housing to catch up. And so these are not in isolation, and I agree with Commissioner McKinley. This is not the place for workforce housing, but we can do something. So I think that you've heard the discussion. I think Commissioner Kerner is going to have the last word on it, but I think that we have an opportunity here.
I'm not trying to get the last word, and I do really appreciate your willingness to understand that we are giving a lot of value to somebody, and we should get something in return. I think it is our job to try to use every tool in our toolbox. So having said that, if it's the will of this board, and it looks like it is, and I see, Scott, you're shaking your head that you're understanding some of the comments made here today, I will vote for this with the intention that that we're going to get something in return for our constituents that can't afford housing in this county. And if that doesn't happen, I think you're very clear on what I'm going to try to do and how I'm going to try to maneuver to make sure this doesn't happen. I'll probably lose, but I'm going to try.
If I may? Yeah, which obviously I'd like to avoid at all costs. The best items are the ones that are approved by everybody. What I would ask, look, we'll start looking at it. Commissioner Kerner, just to address, it hasn't really been a consideration of this application in any respect. So it wasn't that we weren't putting an offer out. It was something that wasn't necessarily a requirement. There were some discussions that took place. Obviously, it came up in detail at the Planning Commission. Sure, the preference would be to avoid it. We will evaluate and study it further. I think staff made the same comment at the Planning Commission with regard to the substance that will ultimately be presented on this as it moves forward in November. What I would ask is, and we'll certainly coordinate with staff, is that there's some flexibility or understanding that this may not fit into a nice, neat little box. I think I heard that a little bit, and so we'd like the ability to maybe get a little creative and work on some options with your staff that are ultimately presented back to you. So, thank you.
Commissioner McKinley?
Yeah, I just want to be careful that we're not trying to do some sort of spot treatment here and requiring it out of this project, because I think it would require that staff look at the impacts of changing the workforce housing requirements in the rural tier, because that's basically what you're asking to be done.
Well,
and we're not going to ask one developer who is looking to do a project in the rural tier without making it a requirement from anybody else who does a project in the rural tier. And so it's a policy decision that the board needs to consider, not specific to this project. And I think the frustration, Mayor, is on this proposal, we have the community okay with it. And we're mucking it up right now, but you can't require it on this project without looking at the policy countywide and the impacts it would have on rural communities across the county.
A question for staff. We're dealing with an overlay here, so obviously we've got a very isolated situation. I'm assuming that if we addressed it with this specific overlay, it's not then going to transfer into future conversations within the rural tier. Am I reading this correctly?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
You may.
As the project manager of the Minto West Ag Enclave and Indian Trails Grove, both of those involve text changes to the plan, just like this overlay does. As part of that, the board, as policymaker, established specific policy criteria that they had for those rural tier projects, a 10% obligation. So they were done through the legislative discretion afforded to the board as the policymaker in the planning process to do it. There is no overall requirement for the entire rural tier because they have their own existing development standards, and that's why, you know, if you're coming in and developing a subdivision, you never would even trigger the process the way you would. But for the overlay, when it's a large development, when you have the ability to control the land use and the zoning, that's when it has been done. So this is a parallel instance. It's not exactly like those other two, but it is a parallel instance, and that's how it's been done in the past.
Very good. Commissioner Kerner has one more question, I think.
So I've read the case law on land use entitlements and legislative decisions, and my understanding from the case law binding in this district is that it's a pure act of legislative grace, and that we have the complete discretion and authority to either grant or deny land use entitlement changes. And so in doing so, that gives us the complete discretion to make, to ask for concessions and extract value out of those land use decisions. Am I wrong about that, Council?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it complete discretion. It's called the fairly debatable standard. And so you do have discretion, but it is not complete. You can't just, you know, try to extract the world out of
No, I
the
mean,
applicant.
complete discretion on granting the land use changes or not.
You do have legislative discretion, but the courts are going to apply what's called a fairly debatable standard, which is essentially that if it can be argued for both sides of the position, then the legislative decision is going to prevail.
Okay. Got it, thank you.
Okay, I think we have beaten this one up. Let's take a vote. We have a motion. It was made by Commissioner McKinley, it was seconded by Commissioner Bernard. I'm going to just, all in favor? All opposed? I believe we have a 7-0. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. We're on item 8, which is ULDC amendments.
Yes, item number 8, we're requesting permission to advertise. This is an amendment for South Florida Water Management District irrigation guidelines. It was presented earlier this year where we amended the code of ordinances. So this is just connecting the dots to the ULDC, to those code of ordinances, as well as modification to who's enforcing it with the board, clarification on the board.
Vice Mayor's made a motion to approve the request for permission to advertise to the amendment of the ULDC. I have a second by Commissioner Kerner. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, it's approved 7-0. We have postponed item 9 to my regret. We'll get back to this, I'm assuming, and we'll move on to item 10.
So item number 10 is also a request for permission to advertise. This is related to the workforce housing units as a result of transfer of development rights, and to ensure that the application of workforce housing for TDRs is consistent across the board. And any other summary?
Yeah, I'll just briefly, so like Wendy mentioned, the intent of this amendment would be so that workforce housing units resulting from the use of TDRs, because there's a 34% requirement that those are workforce housing units, have the same regulations that workforce housing units being born out of the workforce housing program have, because it has created some confusion in the past and sometimes a reluctance from people to utilize the TDR program. And just specifically, this would provide the allowance of all the disposition methods that traditional, if you want to say, workforce housing units have that TDR units do not. It would align the pricing structure, would also, what was the last one? And then one other modification would be eliminating the requirement that any workforce housing TDRs purchased beyond the required 34% be used to provide workforce units only in the low income category. And the reason staff wants to see that change is no one avails themselves to exceeding that 34% figure, because all of them have to be in the very low. So this would just allow it to be spread throughout all the ranges, just like the other required units are. So that kind of summarizes the...
Notwithstanding the discussion we've just had, is there a move to eliminate in lieu of?
That is not included in this. In January, we've set aside the whole morning for the density discussion that will also look at our TDR program, workforce housing program. That discussion certainly can, happen. This didn't include that, though.
Okay,
at this
very
stage.
good. Anybody else have any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, can I have a motion to approve the request for permission? I have a Vice Mayor approving the request for permission to advertise to the amendment to ULDC, seconded by Commissioner Marino. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed? That's a 7-0 vote. Okay, we are done with our regular agenda. County Attorney, any comments?
No comments, sir.
Zoning Director.
The only comment we have is to add in, we put on the agenda this year the zoning calendar for Zoning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners, and that would be a nice way for the public and for us to find it later. So we published it with the memo as part of this agenda. No motions needed. That's all I have to share.
Okay, I think we've all gotten a copy of that, and so we'll go ahead and, we don't receive and file, it's there. Okay. Planning Director.
I do have one. I also have a few slides, but I can happily just speak to it if you don't want a
got time.
presentation. All right. So back in 2020, during the legislative session, there was amendment to Chapter 125, which states that notwithstanding any other local law or local ordinance, governing body may approve affordable housing project. At that time, the only projects that would be eligible if it was 100% affordable housing project could be built on any parcel zone for residential, commercial, or industrial. That was signed by the governor, and it's very open-ended. It doesn't require the board to do that, but it provides that avenue. Then in 2022, there was a further amendment to the statute that then said, instead of that 100% threshold, if a project of at least 10% affordable housing units on commercial or industrial zone lands, provided they weren't using the sale funding, the State Department incentive loan is used. So recently, we have started to get some inquiries from folks that are aware of this statute change and feel that it's important to have some levels of parameters. I mean, if a residential project is coming into lands that are industrial or commercial, residential hasn't been contemplated on it, nor the proper evaluation of what those impacts might be. So technically, what this statute would allow is for the board to approve the project without, a flu amendment change from industrial to residential or commercial. So what we've done is we've started to look at a few jurisdictions, only 2 so far, that have actually modified their comprehensive plans and their codes to address it, St. Petersburg and Jacksonville. And it's to provide those parameters to kind of limit the scope so it's not completely open-ended. So what we're requesting is that the board give staff that direction to come up with some parameters to bring back so that, we feel like these proposed projects could be properly evaluated.
Vice Weiss?
Yeah, in trying to understand what the legislature did, is it true, or would it be, if somebody wanted to build residential development on something that was previously commercial or industrial, regardless of whether there were any of the infrastructure was in place, say for example sewer or water, does the legislation contemplate that and have provisions to require that sewer and water and so forth be brought in to support the level of development?
And that's one of our concerns with this, is that it was left so broad and so open-ended that it's kind of silent to those things. But those are the types of things that we think need to be included in this. But it was just left very broad by the legislature and very open-ended.
Okay, good. Well, we have 3 people served in the legislature up here, so hopefully they can help us get that cleared up as we move forward.
Vice Mayor, to understand what the legislature did, we have to define what is mucking it up.
Commissioner Sachs, you want to give another view of the legislative perspective?
Yes.
I'd be happy to give the
This is
direction.
interesting, and later I'd like to speak to the attorneys or an attorney from the county that can explain where we go with this, because can we go into cities? This is a state statute. Does that mean that our 39 cities now are going to be part of our efforts for affordable housing? Can this, talked about industrial areas. Can we go into some of our industrial that are zoned industrial and build infills of affordable housing? I mean, this is huge. And I'd like to have a detailed discussion with one of the county attorneys, after this meeting. I want to do it publicly, but I'd like to figure out where we're going with this, because I think that Palm Beach County can be one of the leaders in showing how we can define our communities. And we've had a lot of discussion about the cultural characteristics of some of our communities. More than any of the other 67 counties, we are so diverse, from the Glades to the island of Palm Beach, that this has really opened up a window for us, maybe a door that we can move into and do some great work on affordable housing. So I look forward to that. In terms of what the legislature did, that's why I'm on the county commission.
County attorney?
And I'll look to Darren and staff on this, but it's my understanding that this is an elective, this is like a permissive statute, right? It's not mandatory?
That is correct,
And
right. So anyone could technically come here and request it, but it is the full discretion. It's not a mandate by the legislature. It was
And it doesn't broaden the authority that the board would have to adopt comprehensive plans similar to how other comprehensive plan amendments are adopted. So we couldn't just go into a city and enforce something there.
Correct, yeah.
Commissioner McKinley?
You mean like extract something from the city? Mr. Mayor, I don't have to tell you, after serving 5 years on the Business Development Board, and you're our person on that board now, how absolutely protective they are of the industrial zone lands remaining industrial, because they are few and far between left in Palm Beach County. So I hope that this board would pay attention to that. Even more important than bringing homes to our community is also bringing jobs. So keep that in mind, please.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Marino?
Thank you. As one of the few individuals on this board that sat as an elected official in a municipality and as a mayor, I said one of the few. I didn't say the only, one of the few. Yes, and Mac, you also. There is something in place called home rule, and I know if Richard Radcliffe was in here, he'd be standing up and screaming in favor of home rule. But Commissioner Sachs, I just want to caution you, when you open that door and you say you want to tell the cities what to do, that is what home rule is. The cities have the ability to rule themselves. We can't tell them that they should give up their commercial or their industrial areas to build housing. That's not our right. That's not our ability. So while I appreciate you wanting to do that, it's not something that the county has the ability to do. Thank you.
All right, I think you got some direction. Well, no, we don't want a motion. We're just, you want a motion?
Yeah, because we were seeking direction for staff to, work on this. So.
I'll move it. I got a motion by the Vice Mayor to move it. I got a second by Commissioner Kerner. I'm seeing no objection. All in favor, all opposed. It's unanimous. Okay, I'm looking for Executive Director comments.
No comments.
I'm looking for Assistant County Administrator comments.
None.
Okay, Commissioner Kerner, you're recognized.
Thank you for Commissioner comments. I would like to, first, at the August 25th, 2022 zoning hearing, the board directed staff to explore a rural overlay for Heritage Farms. Today, I'm requesting staff look into creating a rural overlay zone for the Fernley Corbett Road, also known as Parkway Estates and Biltmore Acres area, to preserve the rural agriculture culture of the area. Ag culture, yeah. Does that make sense?
Does staff know the area he's speaking
Yes.
about? Okay.
And then one other, if I may, Mayor, as Commissioner McKinley brought up, I'm no longer eligible to serve on the canvassing board, so I'd like to make a motion consistent with the statutes.
To
There's a
appoint
statute, yeah,
Commissioner
there's a
Marino.
statute number, but I lost it. Sorry, Todd. But to appoint Commissioner Marino as your designee as the main canvassing board member. And in doing so, I'd also like to preemptively thank, if it's the board's will to appoint her, I want to preemptively thank you for doing that, recognizing the huge contribution and the huge time contribution and the importance of election integrity. Thank you for what you're about to embark on.
I have a motion by of Commissioner Kerner to appoint Commissioner Marino to the canvassing board. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner McKinley. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Marino, did you want to make a comment accepting the nomination?
I do. I would happily accept the nomination. And Commissioner Kerner, thank you for what you have done in your role, and I look forward to doing the same.
All right, very good. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, all opposed. Show that is approved 7-0. I will make an appointment under my authority as far as the alternate at another date and time. Mr. Von Laren is working with me to identify a suitable candidate for that position. Okay, I'm going to go back to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Sachs, you are recognized. Anything?
Just quick, I know we're on a time crunch. Just remind everybody that we have the Veterans Benefit Fair on Wednesday at the South County Civic Center, and it's open to the public from 9:30 to 12. And if you know any veterans or families of veterans, please invite them over, because this is the time and the place to get your benefits done.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, we had hosted the National Association of Counties Economic Mobility Team in Palm Beach County. We want to thank the county staff, Administrator Baker and their whole team for coordinating all of the efforts to make that a successful event. And also, I'd like to also thank my staff for working on it, especially my Chief of Staff, Wilnita Emanuel. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerner, you any more comments? You're good? Okay. Commissioner McKinley.
Commissioner Bernard, thank you for serving on that appointed position with NACO. I've heard nothing but good things about your service on that committee. And I don't have anything. I just want to thank staff. A lot of back and forth, a lot of volleying. Muck is the soil out in the glades that is known for things sinking in it, and so mucking up would mean that projects were sinking. So hope that clears it up. I had to answer that same question at the annual legislative conference in Washington, D.C. in the National Association of Counties. And also, I'm not sure what the proper phase is, but prior to our next meeting, the community will be celebrating Rosh Hashanah. And so I hope that everybody has...
I want to hear you say Lashana Tova.
Lashana Tova, thank you. Everybody has a blessed celebration and observance of that holiday. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marino.
Amen.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank staff. Last week, we had a Hispanic Heritage Bus Tour that was done with Virginia Savieto from my staff, working in conjunction with our Community Services Department, but I know all the departments throughout Palm Beach County and the Hispanic organizations all participated and made it a really successful event to highlight the good work and community from our Hispanic Spanish-speaking or previously Spanish-speaking residents of Palm Beach County, and so thanks to all. I want to acknowledge our colleague, Mac Bernard, who will be receiving an award in a few minutes for his work in housing by the Philip D. Lewis at a luncheon this afternoon. And also to folks of the Jewish faith. We are entering the highest of holy season, and wish everybody a very happy and sweet New Year, Lashana Tova.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, certainly, congratulations, Commissioner. We're all going to be very happy to fet you at lunch, those of us who were able to get seats at this luncheon today. We all actually participated at the BDB's gala, which was really quite an event. I think our county is very blessed at the number of companies that think that this is the place they want to, put their flag. And a lot of good things are happening here, especially in West Palm Beach, and we certainly are very excited about what's going on. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, certainly I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues about a sweet new year. It's the days of awe. We all, those of us of the Jewish faith, this is the most Jews wind up finding their way to the temples. This is the time when they go. So, like Easter and Christmas, this is our time to take care of our business. So, anyway, we'll see you at the next meeting. We are adjourned.